So Alien Earth is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. Seriously, I haven't seen something this bad since The Last of Us Season 2, and... Oh wait, that wasn't that long ago. God damn, what's happening in television lately? The thing that leaves me scratching my head the most about Alien Earth is the question of, who is this show for? Is it for the fans of the Alien franchise? Because it doesn't really feel like an Alien TV show. In fact, aliens are hardly in it. Most of the show surrounds these weird androids that are part robot and part small dying child. Even when there are aliens in the episode, it mostly focuses on these other, new, creepy aliens like the eye octopus and the bug creatures. It doesn't really feel like a story that fits into the Alien franchise, and is instead a generic science fiction show with an alien skin slapped on top of it. Sure, they use words like android, Weyland-Yutani, and Xenomorph, but it's not like you couldn't replace all this stuff with other names and titles and still get the same result. It's like the inverse of Andor, which is a show that used the Star Wars brand as a way to tell a really compelling story. Alien Earth, on the other hand, just uses its IP to bring the audience back in order to bore them to death with uninteresting ideas that lack any depth or humanity. It's boring, really. And dumb. Really, really dumb. But to understand my frustration fully, we're gonna need to break it down. Number 1. Hollow and disconnected characters. Now, it's no secret for any story to be compelling, you'll need at least one interesting character for the audience to get invested in. Someone likable, relatable, charming, admirable, brave, or wise, or just someone who's willing to be a part of a 2-hour-long Pepsi commercial. This helps the audience get invested into whatever wacky story you're trying to tell them, because they want to see these people succeed. This is especially true for science fiction stories, where the world is often more foreign and the ideas are more out of place than, let's say, a western or a romantic comedy set in, I don't know, New York City. Big scientific concepts can get a little dry after a while, so having someone with at least some personality can help smooth things over and add a little humanity to the subject matter. Whether it's a father trying to get back to his family, a young farmer trying to overthrow a fascist regime, or a badass Sigourney Weaver trying to survive on a cargo vessel with a horny alien. These kinds of characters have relatable goals or intrinsic values an audience can find appealing. Alien Earth, however, has none of this. There is not a single goddamn character in this entire show that has an ounce of relatability or could even be considered likable. I mean, except maybe Kirsch, but that's only because he's played by Timothy Olyphant. No one has any personality, and that's because the characters mostly consist of weird android-human hybrids. But even the people are hollow. Hermit, for example, has one of two settings throughout the show. Either he's shocked and quiet, or he's mildly sad and quiet, which essentially comes across as the same emotion on screen. Besides the fact that he wants to get his robot sister away from this evil corporation, he has no real goal or purpose. When we meet Hermit, he's a medic in the military. He's quickly thrown into action when the spaceship crashes into the city he's in. Hermit then has to go on a rescue mission to help the people at the crash site. So you'd think that this kind of character may have a deep-seated need to help people, or is overly empathetic and likes to serve humanity. Well, not if you're Hermit. I mean, sure, he helps some people, I guess. Wait, do we actually see him perform any medical assistance on anyone? He's got blood on his hands there. Oh look, there's a person on fire. Maybe he's gonna help them. No, he just walks straight by them. Okay. Oh, he asks an Indian kid if he needs help. Oh, he's a robot, he doesn't need help. Hey look, a party of innocent civilians. Maybe he'll warn them about the murderous alien that's lurking outside. No, just gonna let them die. Alright. And sure, you'd also think that these traumatic events would also take a toll on Hermit, but he maintains the same innocuous gaze throughout all of his scenes. He sees thousands of people die, he fights an alien, he watches his teammates and friends die, he reunites with his dead sister, and then he almost dies. But you never get the impression that this has any impact on him. In fact, it's like none of it happened at all.
How do I act so well?
And if the characters aren't vapid husks, then they're just shallow and obnoxious jerks. The only person in Alien Earth with any real presence is Cavalier. He's an asshole, and he loves it. But if the only guy in your show that has any personality is the most loathsome character around, then who are you supposed to connect to? Are we supposed to relate to the weird child androids that act like stumbling morons or complete psychopaths? Or how about the cyborg that is willing to let everyone he knows get killed for the sake of a murderous alien? Or how about this guy? Or him? Or her? The point is that I don't really care who wins or loses in this story because everyone is either too weird or too evil to get invested in. Number 2. Tone. A huge problem with Alien Earth is how the show feels. There isn't a consistency in how everything is presented, and typically the show is all over the place, to the point where it becomes hard to tell if we're supposed to be laughing, or feeling tense, or rolling our eyes. For those of you who don't know, tone is what you could call the emotional flavor of the story. This is established through music, dialogue, genre, and so on. For example, in an old-timey romance, there will be a lot of melodic violin music to underscore the deep feelings the characters have for one another. Or a comedy will typically have ridiculous dialogue or over-the-top physical humor to create an aura of lightheartedness and joy. Blending these tones together can be difficult, and typically films and TV shows will mostly stick to one tone in order to tell a consistent story. Alien Earth, however, can't seem to decide whether it wants to be a deep science fiction drama, a goofy alien slasher flick, or some kind of witty action show with lots of quips and funny dialogue. For example, during the crash sequence, we see Hermit's team cracking jokes and acting like everything is fine when they just witnessed thousands of people die. It makes the whole sequence feel much more lighthearted and inconsequential. After all, I'm not sure how many police officers and firefighters were cracking jokes when they watched the World Trade Center collapse.
It reminds me of that tragedy.
Oh, 9/11.
Yeah, don't laugh at 9/11
What?
again. 9/11.
And of course, you could say that this is simply a harsh and uncaring future where things like sympathy and empathy are a lot more rare. But that only proves my point that this story utterly lacks that core of humanity that is essential for the audience's investment. Now, I understand playing around with odd ideas and concepts in science fiction, but it immediately becomes apparent that putting retarded children in the bodies of adult robots is more of a setup for a Spaceballs sketch rather than a serious story about killer aliens. Having adults walking around and acting like children when people are dying by the thousands simply doesn't gel well with the tone. We as the audience can't take the story seriously if the characters aren't going to either. All of this is to say that there is no real feelings of stakes in Alien Earth. The characters laugh off danger, any consequences are met with indifference, and nobody properly reacts to the situations that they are in. So when someone dies, it doesn't really have any impact. This makes the whole show feel really hollow and boring to watch because there isn't any emotional investment. Number 3. Stupid is as stupid does. Pretty much every character in Alien Earth is a dumb asshole. So dumb, in fact, that it makes Ellie from The Last of Us look like a genius in comparison.
I'm gonna be a dad.
Now, it's not unusual for characters in horror stories to be kind of incompetent. However, in the original Alien film, the crew of the Nostromo aren't prepared for the situation they're in. They're space truckers working on a commercial vessel. They aren't scientists or experts on alien life forms. So there's a very excusable reason for their bad decision making. They are simply unaware of the real danger they're in, and they underestimate the alien. This adds to the tension of the story because in reality, the characters are reacting pretty much the same way most audience members would. It makes the movie more compelling, relatable, and more believable. However, Alien Earth does not have this excuse. All of the main characters are not only prepared for the aliens, but they also have intimate knowledge about their species. This turns the tension into frustration because the characters should know what they're getting into. For example, when Prodigy gets the aliens onto their island, they make little to no effort to make them secure. First of all, they put all these terrifying space creatures into one room instead of separating them so they're easier to control. This way, if one alien gets out, the rest are still contained. Or how about having guards around the room at all times? They actually make a smart move of not allowing humans near the eggs, but then don't think to have anyone guarding the outside of the room itself. At least have like a squad of guys down the hallway in case one of your retarded child robots locks themselves inside one of the containers. And even though this place has like 1 million cameras, it seems like nobody is watching them except the one untrustworthy android. I mean, this is just an idea, but maybe have like 100 people watching the cameras to the one room that contains all the murderous fucking aliens?
Oh, right, yeah, of course.
That's not even considering all the failsafes that could be put in place just to stop human error. Like making the doors to the cells need at least 2 people to open them. Or have one-way mirrors surrounding their containers so they can't obviously plan a way to escape. Or have some kind of failsafe where the room explodes or the air becomes toxic if any of the aliens leave their cells. Some sort of dead man's hand kill code or something. I mean, literally do anything except having the responsibility fall to these experimental children that are unable to grasp the situation that they're in. Throughout the entire show, all we hear is how smart everyone is in this Jurassic Park island, but we never actually see anyone act with any intelligence. We got a genius rich guy, super smart androids, super smart baby robots, and a revolutionary scientist that made the whole thing happen. Yet, all these people are outwitted by Slightly, someone who can barely string a sentence together without almost having a mental breakdown. This Indian kid is so obviously up to something that he's quite literally bursting at the seams with emotion, yet the only one who seems to notice is Timothy Olyphant. I mean, this guy sneaks into Hermit's room after blatantly pointing out that he dislikes him. He then suspiciously tries to lure Hermit away from everyone else with this idiotic ploy about showing him something. Yes, that's his actual plan. All the while, he's twitching and staring like he's about to murder Hermit.
That guy's here to kill me.
Yet Hermit does nothing about this. He doesn't tell any of the scientists or warn his sister, nothing. He just shrugs it off and walks away. Yeah, having a weird android with a child's mind creep into your room is totally fine. I wouldn't worry about it. I'm sure if this kid had literally said, "Hey, come with me to this isolated location so I can murder you," Hermit would have had the same stupid blank stare he always does, and still would have done nothing about it.
What an idiot!
This plays into a larger issue with the characters, which is a general lack of communication. Half the problems in this show would be solved if people just gave their friends a heads up about what's going on every once in a while. And not to keep coming back to Hermit for examples, but he's essentially the poster child for bad writing, so here we go. So in episode 2, Hermit narrowly escapes the Xenomorph. And soon after getting away, he quickly runs into a fellow soldier. However, instead of immediately warning this guy about this highly dangerous alien that's chasing him, Hermit instead asks him if he's seen any animals. Wait, that's all you're gonna say? I mean, maybe I'm just not as cool as Hermit is, but if I were in his shoes, I'd probably warn my friend about the evil alien trying to murder me, and then would immediately try to leave the location. Hermit instead refuses to give out any of this valuable information, and then goes on to try and evacuate these rich assholes. And yet, he still doesn't mention this to anyone. This of course leads to the alien showing up and killing everyone at the party. Which all could have been avoided if Hermit had decided to act like a real human being instead of a mute piece of shit. And this is just one example, but this problem is pretty rampant through Alien Earth, and it makes the show feel overly frustrating to watch. I mean, there's a point where you stop caring about these characters, and instead almost hope for them to die because they're too much of a liability. Throughout this video, I've proven that despite being a medic, Hermit is never shown saving anyone, and is actually personally responsible for the deaths of at least tens of people, all because of his own stupidity. This is not how you create a likable or compelling protagonist. Number 4. Aliens. You know, there was a time in cinema where the Xenomorph was a very intimidating and fearsome antagonist. It was a creature that was intelligent, creepy, vicious, and it couldn't be reasoned with. It was essentially the embodiment of death and the fear of the unknown, which was a big part of the reason it became such a successful franchise. But now, it's become yet another in a long line of played out sequels and rebooted IPs. Like the Terminator franchise, there were really just a couple of good films that were made like 40 years ago, which built enough goodwill and nostalgia to push forward a series of crappy spin-offs, prequels, and sequels that nobody wanted. And now that goodwill has dried up with all the constant disappointments. But like everything else nowadays, all we have left is soulless corporate cash grabs that try to use famous IPs to pump out crappy stories. Disney knows if they slap an alien skin on the cover of a show or film, there will at least be some core audience that will take the bait. And sure, they will do a good job at making everything look pretty. It will resemble the good old days when these franchises were cool and new. But it won't have any of the heart in it. I mean, the aliens themselves are hardly in the show. And even when they are, it's never the same. They aren't intimidating or threatening, they don't represent an existential fear of the unknown or a looming threat to humanity. They're just part of the theme park now. And so that's where we're left with this franchise. Just another rotting zombie waiting for that last pickaxe through the brain. That last financial failure that will shelve this IP forever. What was once a mighty beast at the box office is now reduced to a forgettable and pathetic television series that will likely never get a second season. And so this is how the Alien franchise dies. Not with a roar, but with a whimper.